Hello. Today I'm going to talk about Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. It's a fascinating short story that was published about a little over 70 years ago, but is very relevant today and will probably be relevant forever, I would say. If you don't know Jackson's work, she's most famous for The Haunting of Hill House, and also We Have Always Lived in the Castle is another story she's very famous for. If you haven't seen The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, I highly recommend that. It's a pretty good adaptation and it's a great story. So I'm going to talk a bit about it, and if you want to like and subscribe, if you want to, you can do that. You can hit the bell for notifications if you don't want to miss any of my videos. I'm going to start with reading the synopsis for the story, and then we'll get into some of the analysis. So here we go. The lottery is set in a small town on a summer day, and the townspeople gather for an annual event known as the lottery. The lottery is a traditional ceremony that involves randomly selecting one person from the town to be stoned to death. The process of the lottery is conducted with a sense of routine and normalcy, and the townspeople participate without questioning the ritual. The story follows a woman named Tessie Hutchinson who becomes the unfortunate victim chosen by the lottery. As the town members turn on her, including her own family, the story explores themes of conformity, tradition, and the darker aspects of human nature. So this story was first published in the New Yorker in 1948, so it's quite old. But when it came out, it had a very polarized kind of reaction. Actually, that's not the right word. Overwhelmingly negative reaction. She received a lot of hate mail, and a lot of the subscriptions to the New Yorker were canceled. But I think it's a brilliant story. In fact, I think if you have any interest in writing short stories, you should examine this, because the economy of language and the leanness of the story just shows how good of a writer she is, because she packs a lot of information in a very short word count. So anyway, first time I read this story was in high school. It's in most, or was, I don't know if it still is, but it was in most of the US curriculum. Partly because it's short, so it's easy to read in a weekend or whatever and then talk about it, but also because it shows you a lot about the dangers of conforming, which I think is very important for a high school student to become aware of. The main thing about this is it's like a folk horror tale. If you like those sort of things, I also have a video on folk horror films, occult and folk horror films. You can check that out if you want to. But this story, some of the great things about it, one is the savagery. It's just it's done in such a way that is kind of senseless, and it examines how people will just go with the majority without really questioning what they're doing. And I think this blind acceptance is very dangerous, and we have seen a lot of that in the last few years, I'd say. Perhaps maybe the last 10 years, but specifically the last 5 years, with things that were related to the pandemic, but also a lot of the social justice stuff. I think those ideas of just following what others are doing without actually being mindful of it, or in the present, and kind of like examining your choices, I think is very dangerous. And another thing this story actually focuses on a lot is the scapegoat, which I think the media during COVID did a lot of that, scapegoating certain groups. Politicians do this all the time, and then the news specifically, but if you have a person that you can scapegoat, then it can rally everyone else around that's to go against that scapegoat. And that's basically what the story is they do this lottery and they all get numbers, and this woman's number is drawn, so she's the one that is sort of volunteered to die as this sacrifice. But what they do in this story is, it's very like business-like. It's very strange in its use of bureaucracy, I guess. And one of the great things about it is it shows that there's this kind of like forgotten meaning. So they're still doing this thing long after the meaning has sort of gone away, which I think a lot of our rituals are like that. If you look into any of our holidays, especially, most people don't celebrate them the way that they were originally intended. So it just shows that people will kind of go through the motions and not question what they're doing often. What else is great about this is that there's a lot of different symbolism in it. There's this black box where they put all the numbers, and originally the numbers used to be on chips, wooden chips, but because there are so many people in the village now, they actually write them on paper so they can fit more in the box. But the box is almost like this holy relic, kind of. And she had, I would say, a pretty good understanding of the occult. And in the story, the box is black, which is, if you know anything about the occult, that's a very powerful symbol. The black box, the black cube, which is often associated with Saturn. Someday I'm going to do a video on Saturn and the black cube, but I don't know if this is the right time. There's more I kind of have to wrap my head around, I guess, is the best way to put it. So maybe eventually I will, but for now I'll say that it's a very potent symbol. And even the kids have these like stones piled up ready to throw at the scapegoat, and that's obviously a biblical reference. And yeah, I just think that it's very concise and powerful and potent. If you've never read it, I think you should read it. I think you'd probably enjoy it. But I do think there's a cost to going against the majority, and I think she paid that price. So before I leave, I'm going to read a little excerpt of one of her reactions to the backlash. One of the most terrifying aspects of publishing stories and books is the realization that they're going to be read and read by strangers. I had never fully realized this before, although I had, of course, in my imagination, dwelt lovingly upon the thought of the millions and millions of people who are going to be uplifted and enriched and delighted by the stories I wrote. It had simply never occurred to me that these millions and millions of people might be so far from being uplifted that they would all sit down and write me letters I was downright scared to open. Of the 300-odd letters that I received that summer, I can count only 13 that spoke kindly to me, and they were mostly from friends. Even my mother scolded me. Dad and I did not care at all for your story in the New Yorker, she wrote sternly. It does seem, dear, that this gloomy kind of story is what all you young people think about these days. Why don't you write something to cheer people up? So that's Shirley Jackson responding to the hate generated by her story. And yeah, I think that's something that most writers most creators in general, not just writers, but anyone that creates anything, an artist, writer, director, anything, dancer, everyone has an opinion. And sometimes even you have to think of like the lowest kind of common denominator might have the loudest voice, and so you kind of pay the price when you write something that challenges the audience. And I think this story definitely challenges any reader that dives into it, because it forces you to examine your choices and times that maybe you've gone with the herd. So it's kind of like a dark mirror that's being held up. But I think it's a fascinating story. Anyway, that's about all I got today. If you like anything in this video, you can like it, subscribe, whatever you want. And I think that's about it. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.